So we might have a record-breaking year with our stream cleanups, but it's not just about picking up litter. It's about prevention of that litter getting there in the first place and educating people about what they can do at home and at work to protect our water resources. So we have these Creek Week passports, and they are for kids and adults. You can get a stamp for being here tonight, and if you collect 3 stamps through the week, you get a prize, a little patch, and you also get entered for an $80 gift certificate to Frog Hollow Outdoors. And they do canoe trips and kayak trips and camps for kids. So if you'd like to participate, I have those at the back table there. We're going to have 3 speakers tonight, and you can feel free to ask questions as each speaker is presenting, and there will also be a little bit of time at the end to ask any of the speakers. We wanted to get a representation of some of the different ways we use and protect water. So our first speaker tonight will be Vicki Westbrook, and she is the Assistant Director of the Water Management Department for the City of Durham. Second will be Lance Fontaine, and he is a water quality analyst in that same division that I'm in Public Works, Stormwater and GIS Services. And Kim Oberly will be our third speaker. She is from Durham Parks and Recreation in the Outdoor Recreation Division as a recreation manager. So thank you to all of our speakers. And Vicki.
Well, thank you, Laura, for the introduction, and I must point out I'm one of 3 assistant directors with the Department of Water Management. However, we have 2 vacancies, so I'm kind of busy. And I'm pleased to be here. I'm not sure we're going to hit on the past too much, but I did kind of want to give you an overview of what the Department of Water Management is all about and how we work with our other departments here. We interact with them on a daily basis just about, but we want to make sure that you understand that your drinking water that you obtain from the City of Durham is safe to drink. We want to make sure it's reliable, and we always want to make sure that it's affordable. So this is our mission that our goal as a part of our strategic plan is to provide cost-effective water and wastewater services that meet our customers' expectations. And on top of that, we want to make sure we're meeting all of the regulatory requirements. So it's very important that, you know, we are doing what we do every day, and it's important that you understand that we're doing it 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, that we're always there. If you don't see us, hear us, and the water comes out, and you flush the toilet, we've done our job. And we want you to appreciate that and pay your water bill. Why is it so important? It's because there's only this amount of water on Earth that's available. And when we talk about this, it's a blue planet, but only the little teeny sliver of green is what's available for actual drinking water purposes. So we're not left with a whole lot to deal with on a regular basis. And that is groundwater, surface water, anything that's not tied up as either salt water or as a part of the ice caps. What are our major challenges? Well, we have aging infrastructure. Throughout the country, the American Society of Civil Engineers gave America's infrastructure a grade D. Hopefully we are doing a lot better than that, but we didn't get an individual assessment. But they're estimating that we're losing 2.1 trillion gallons of water, drinking water. It's already been treated, and it's being lost through pipelines. And what we try to do is make sure that we're checking and finding those leaks and fixing them so that our infrastructure is not that bad. And some of our oldest lines date back to the early 1900s. The projects that you're seeing around here in downtown Durham, the Downtown Loop Project, soon that we'll be working over in the Central Park area. Those are replacing lines that have been in place since the 1930s. Why are we doing that? A number of reasons, but if you see this picture here, you don't want water flowing through pipes like that on a regular basis, so we're trying to get those pipes out, fix those leaks, make them more stronger, resilient, and make sure we continue to deliver the water that you need. I want to talk about the history a little bit. So this is the Williams Water Treatment Plant. Talk about aging infrastructure. This was built and put online in 1917 and is still serving us today. We'll be planning a birthday party in a couple of years, or next year, to recognize that. But that is old. It still has a capacity to provide about 22 million gallons of water on a daily basis. It usually doesn't treat that much. It runs at about anywhere between 6 to 8, depending on what time of year it is. We do have another water treatment plant in northern Durham that has one of the planned activities is to expand that. Another major challenge, not from you guys because you're here today, but you don't take water for granted. You don't think that because it falls out of the sky, it should be free. You recognize that there's a process in place. But there is a level of disconnect among some of our customers, and we want them to appreciate that. And they have to be willing to pay for it. I don't want to get sidetracked, but many of the things you hear about that's happening with Flint, Michigan have been a level of disconnect about sharing information back and forth. Another major challenge that we're all faced with is climate change and variability. We don't know when the water is going to fall. We don't know how much it's going to fall. We only know that it will come periodically. And a lot of the predictions are that we'll have much more stronger storms, but they'll be a distance further. So we're looking at how do we, capture and maintain that. Then we have to be looking at changes to water demand and how it's used. And we have to use all that information to make infrastructure decisions. One of the things that we're always concerned about that's kind of tied to climate would be drought. This is, sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and remember back to these times. This is very scary. We don't want to ever get there again, and that's why we're so carefully planning for a number of things to, as far as water supply. Yes, ma'am. That is a picture of the Little River Dam in December of 2007, when usually there is water up to there. So this is not a good sight. Never good to see your dam like that. We're looking also at how we manage our daily demand. We think we have a pretty good trend here. You can see the old days before the first drought of the century. Then it dropped down, and it's remained relatively stable since the second drought of the century. People are using water more efficiently, and we'll touch on that. Another way is to look at expanding our resources. What do we have available? Well, we have Tier Quarry. It's out there, kind of if you go to Captain D Seafood on Roxborough Road and take a right, you hit Denfield and hit the end of that. You're not supposed to go down there and look at it, but it's quite a lovely site. That is another source that we have. Right now, we're not using the water. It's being refilled by rainwater and also some groundwater recharge. But we did use that in 2007 for about a month and a half. We could not use it exclusively. It has to be used as a supplement. It adds about 40 to 50 days of supply when we can use about 3 to 4 million gallons a day out of it. But it's more just a reserve capacity. We can't rely on that. In 2007, we did use that, but we were also using water from our interconnections with Orange Water and Sewer Authority and Town of Cary. And it took all of that and the dramatic cutbacks that customers made to be able to get us through until the rains came. Another challenge that we're all facing is regulatory compliance. Increasingly stringent requirements, disinfection byproducts, they form in the distribution system. They're called trihalomethanes and HAAs. There are some other ones that are not as tightly regulated now, but depending on the type of disinfection you use, you will form those disinfection byproducts. You can't stop it, they're going to happen, but the way and the amounts can decrease those levels. And why are they of concern? EPA and has said, based on some health studies, that if you drank 2 liters of water a day that was consistently exceeding the levels for 70 years, you would have an elevated risk of getting kidney cancer or some other forms of cancer. So a lot of what we look at is addressing long-range issues. And of course, everyone is aware that we're concerned about lead. And we are, here in Durham, you're in good shape. Right now, we're getting ready to be kicking off in June our we have triennial, every 3-year testing for lead and copper. We'll be kicking that off in June through September. We always choose the hot weather months. Those are likely to be the months in which heat can contribute to lead leaching, but we're always monitoring at points throughout the distribution system for what we call water quality parameters, and those are indicators of whether the corrosion inhibitor, which we do add and have been adding since the 1970s, that is working correctly, that the pH level within the system is maintained correctly, and those things have to be sort of hit a sweet spot to make sure that there's no unintended consequences if they get out of whack. So we're monitoring all of those things on a daily basis. Yes, sir.
Are any of these old pipes that they're removing really
No, sir. These are mostly the old concrete pipes, that they're cast iron pipes. The lead service lines have been mentioned as an area of concern. We don't know of any existing lead service lines. They were generally more used in the north, and I think a lot of since we started building and growing more in the southern states a little bit, more of a boom in the 40s and 50s, not as much of an exposure, but in some of the older neighborhoods, if they haven't been replaced, there could be a risk of the lead service lines, but if the corrosion inhibitor is in place and working effectively, we're certainly minimizing that risk. This is just an example of a conventional water treatment plant process, a schematic. We go through coagulation, sedimentation, filtration, disinfection, and then there's storage out in the system. And all of those are in a conventional treatment plant. There are a lot of much more expensive options that some folks may have to use based on their source water. We're very fortunate that Lake Mickey and Little River are great water resources. There's only a little bit of agricultural runoff, but there's not a lot of development around there. There's nothing upstream. So we're very, very fortunate to have those really clean water supplies that make life easier for all of us. Just touch on utility security as a challenge that we have. Certainly, we are exposed with 1,200 miles of distribution system all over the city and county. We also have elevated storage tanks, so there's opportunities if someone chose where they're fenced, they're barbed wire, but there's always opportunities for evil people to do what they do. So if you see any strange activity around any of these places, certainly call 911 and report that. So you may wonder how we address the challenges, and that's where we need the appropriate level of funding. I see Mr. Davis has joined us, and have to appreciate him and other city council members, because they've been very supportive of our modest but ongoing rate increases that we ask for every year, because the Water and Sewer Fund, self-supporting, and for all of the projects that we need to build to maintain our existing infrastructure and expand, we have to have that approval. And we have to have other programs in place to manage the demand and resources. Here's an example of proposed capital funding for $143.5 million for FY17. It's not too small. And then here are just the water CIP projects. You'll see rehabilitation. That's really where it's important for us to not only look at, what may be going on in a customer's home, but at the start, where like we have some Lake Mickey and Little River rehabilitation projects. We just developed a 50-year rehab plan and maintenance plan for them so that they will serve us for another 50 years. Lake Mickey being built in 1926 and Little River in 1988. We need to keep them ongoing. But we also have money in there for the facilities rehabilitation and also for water system improvements, but just the distribution system. That's, again, the pipes like the downtown loop project. We have money in there for water source protection. We're always trying to look at extending the protection around Lake Mickey and Little River because it's very important that we protect them from further development, minimize runoff. Yes, sir.
$500,000 for source water protection sounds ludicrous to me.
It's purchasing.
I won't buy much land.
Well, we have been purchasing on a regular basis, so we may not buy anything one year and it stays in the fund and it grows, but we do it on a very passive process. So sometimes when the owner dies and they leave the land to their children may not want to do anything, so we just have been passively acquiring that over time. So the idea is, if we needed to, we could always bump that up. But right now, we're just looking at doing it on very passive as people are willing to sell. This isn't what we're doing at the Williams Water Treatment Plant. We're expanding residuals. We're doing some other things, but you can see just the overhead view of where there's projects coming on. Most of those are upfits. It has a very limited footprint. We have to be very careful. So it's never going to have any larger capacity. It's only going to be able to reliably treat the water to the existing requirements of state and federal drinking water rules. The Brown plant is also going to have some new treatment trains added. So we are expanding the capacity from 30 million gallons per day to 42 million gallons per day. The big white, those are the clear wells, so after the water's gone totally through the process, they sit there on site until it's released into the distribution system. The residuals handling project, if you remember back to the other conventional, there's the sedimentation. Well, you're adding chemicals to make different things settle out, usually mud and things like that are going to be in your source water. So we're constantly removing that from the process, and we have to deal with that. That's what the residuals are. And this is just a picture of one of the upcoming improvements where we'll be addressing that. We'll pay for it, hopefully through affordable rates. We implemented tiered rates for our single-family residential customers in 2008. We think it's been a big help in helping manage the demand, especially when people start getting into the higher tiers. They pay a lot more for that water, so there's been a lot of change in how people are using their water. A lot of that's been done through education, but also the sort of like the two-way communication about the rate increases. Commercial, anybody that's non-residential, they're billed at tier 3, and then we do have a significant rate for irrigation-only accounts. We want to make it sure that even though we're requesting increases, we want it to be affordable. This is a dashboard that the Environmental Finance Center over at UNC produces, and this is one of the things we're most concerned with. This is the affordability. So in this particular slide, we're compared to other utilities within a 50-mile radius. And then we look at all of these. We look at how our bill compares for the average customer, whether it sends a strong conservation signal or not. We want to make sure we're recovering our costs, and then we want it to be affordable. And to be considered affordable, it's supposed to be within 2% of the median annual household income. That's an EPA standard. So we try to make sure that we're addressing that. I'm going to zip through these last ones, but we want to make sure that you understand we approach not only planning, but we also look at how can we change our customers' behavior and give them appropriate devices and appliances so that they can manage their water use and be effective and efficient. So we have a strong conservation program. It's been in place since 1993, and we think it continues to evolve and improve. We use a number of outreach and education tools and devices. So we're here tonight in the corner because this is Fix a Leak Week, and Detective Lim is back there. We also look at what tools in the field. We offer water use assessments. We make on-site visits so customers can learn how they can cut back and how discover one of those leaks. If we can save leak, that's a great thing. Then we also look at devices, toilet rebates, put in a high-efficiency toilet, high-efficiency shower heads, all of these things, using the rain barrels. All of these things can help cut back on how much water people use. Here's one of the tools, the City of Durham website, water management page, reporting leaks, reporting spills. Call Durham One Call. They have an after-hours service. They'll dispatch somebody if needed. If you want to report something online, you can do that. And we also updated the lead information, so if customers have questions on what they can do themselves if they're concerned about lead in their tap water, certainly there's steps that customers can take. I did bring some fact sheets that I can distribute to everybody. And then I will mention that if you ever have a concern about the quality of your water, it tastes funny, it smells funny, it looks funny, it's a different color, always call. You can call Durham One Call. If they can't answer the question, they will put you through to our staff. They will dispatch someone to collect a sample. We're more than happy to do that. Our staff can go out during regular business hours. If you need to have a lead test, you're really concerned about that, we're more than happy to do that. The testing protocol is a little bit different because we want to get a sample of the water after it's been sitting in your pipes for 6 hours or more. So it's either first thing in the morning or first thing when you get home from work that you need to collect that sample. So there's some constraints on that, but we're happy to provide that, and that would be at no cost. So this is how you can help. You're here today, so you are involved. We want you to understand, even though the pipes are in the ground or the treatment plants are way in a location you don't ever see them, except probably the Williams plant on Hillendale, just be aware we've got infrastructure needs. When they finally finish this downtown loop project and the streets are smooth again, you'll probably have forgotten all about that. We hope people who have been inconvenienced do feel that way. You're here. I don't think we need to encourage you to develop an appreciation for water. And when you talk about utilizing the latest technology, we have so many devices and ways that we can help you cut back on your personal use, but we also work with commercial entities to make that happen. Knowledge is power. We want you to share with others. And you're here, but we want you to embrace environmental stewardship and watershed protection policies and practices. And so with that, I will say you can find me if you want me. We always have time to answer questions. You can get to us through the list staff directory on our website, or write this down. James is here as well, conservation manager. And you had a question. Mm-hmm. I can answer question number 1. We're the Department of Water Management, and we manage all the water except the stormwater. That's by design, but we do have the stormwater experts here that can address that at their term. Now, you were asking about, do we have an adequate plan in place to address providing water for a 54% growth rate? And I will tell you that we are always looking at planning ahead. We have, in addition to Lake Mickey and Little River, we already have a 10 million gallon per day allocation from Jordan Lake. We don't utilize that on a regular basis because we can only obtain that through our interconnection with the town of Cary. We have submitted a request to the Environmental Management Commission for an additional 6.5 million gallons per day from Jordan Lake, which will give us a total of 16.5. We've looked at our water demands through 2060, and we believe that the existing sources that we have, like Mickey, Little River, and full utilization of the Jordan Lake allocation would get us where we needed to be. That is more on the nutrient end of things, and a conventional water treatment plant can address those sorts of conventional pollutants. So we would likely be looking at establishing either a large, another intake on Jordan Lake, and either sending raw water to one of our treatment plants for treatment, or potentially building an additional water treatment plant that would be a regional plant shared with some of our partners in the area, and that would be able to treat those sort of conventional level pollutants. Doesn't mean that the chemical cost or the energy cost wouldn't go up a little bit, but it's not the sort of astronomical climb that you might expect. I'm not disagreeing with that at all. I mean, that's, you know, I also had the wastewater treatment plants, and I didn't show you that half of the CIP. Yes, ma'am. Gray water systems are managed by public health because they are interconnections with the house. We like the concept of them as long as there's no way for that to be interconnected with the city's potable water supply. Another resource we're looking at, in addition to offset potable water demand, is a pretty much robust reclaimed water system where we take the treated effluent from either of our 2 wastewater or water reclamation facilities, formerly known as wastewater treatment plants, formerly known as sewer plants, and is highly treated. It has some nutritional value in the nutrients, and you can use it for irrigation. You can use it for a number of non-potable uses. So we're a little bit behind the curve from our colleagues in Cary and Owasso, but we have a water and sewer master plan that we're likely to be presenting to City Council towards the end of this year.
Why can't we use Falls Lake for what's closer?
Well, for one thing, we would have to be dealing with the Corps of Engineers, and Raleigh has a deal for 100% of the water supply pool. Yeah.
How they manage that?
Hey, it's Raleigh. Anything else? Thank you.
Bring my slide. All right, well, I'm Lance Fontaine with the Public Works Department, Stormwater and GIS Services, and as a resident of Durham, I'm very happy that people like Vicki are working hard to keep our water nice and clean. Now, I'm going to take a slightly different angle here of And Vicki touched on it a little bit with stormwater. So, and I hopefully will try to do a little past, present, and future to some degree. So first of all, we're talking about stormwater. So this stuff is not, it's when it rains, it snows, this is water that hits the surface and it goes down. It goes into the drain. It is not treated. So it goes straight from, you know, the grate in downtown right into Ellerby Creek, which goes straight into Falls Lake. So what these are, this is a watershed. So I thought I'd first hit on what is a watershed. So watershed is the area of land that drains to one particular body of water. And so in terms of like scale, Durham, which is the, there's a laser beam, the dot up there, we drain, about half of us drains to Cape Fear on the southern side of the town, and about the other half drains to the Neuse River. Going a little bit closer in, so this is looking at the county of Durham, and so the water on the northeast side there goes to New Bern. So really what we're doing affects not just Falls Lake, but it also goes downstream all the way to New Bern, and on the other side it goes not just to Jordan Lake and to Carey's drinking water, ours in the future possibly, but also to Wilmington. So really these are highly interconnected systems. So now I really didn't want to go too deep into regulations, but there's a lot of stuff that drives what we do. And obviously, the gentleman over there was bringing up concerns about the pollution. So we are, as stormwater, we do have rules and regulations that guide a lot of what we do. And these are here. I mean, there's 8 pollutants. 6 streams are listed as impaired. We have these TMDLs, which restrict the amount of stuff that we can put in the water. 4 water supplies, 3 water bodies, 3 nutrient strategies. That's Falls, Jordan Lake, 2 different lakes, and an estuary, as well as an NPDES permit. So there really are a lot of things that drive what we do. And then you can also ask, well, you know, why care? So we obviously heard before, you know, water's a big obvious one. I know I can personally think of 2 different reasons we would care. Not, you know, I've got kids and I don't want them to grow up having to pick up trash after us all the time. But these systems, so I'm an ecologist as a background, and it's not really an engineer. So we study how environments affect organisms and how organisms affect environments. So it seems that we're, if anything, affecting them more. And what are we possibly harming with all this pollution? So these watersheds provide for us these ecosystem services, they're called. And it's really just a fancy word for stuff like recreation, biodiversity, aesthetics, flood protection. So the trees and everything, they filter the waters and they filter the storm water so that when it does get into Jordan, eventually it is somewhat cleaner. Wildlife habitat, they provide opportunities for research, carbon sequestration, water quality improvements. So there really are lots of these ecosystem services that are provided by our watersheds and having nice watersheds and healthy streams. So I'm not going to try to pick on agriculture here, but I just wanted to pick an example that was close to me because this happens to be my neighborhood in 1964. And it's just sort of a demonstration of how past land uses have altered things today. I mean, obviously downtown urbanization, I feel is a little bit of an easier target, but some of those other practices may not be as evident now, but they still impact us today. So, you know, back in the day, they put in some roads, some driveways. Right here, there's a really beautiful ground seep wetland. You'll see, it's kind of hard to see on this, but they completely straightened the channel. And that was kind of an old time practice, and put in these almost like chevron, real sharp angle things to drain the fields, to provide more area to build, or more area for agriculture, more area for, you know, to keep the stream from getting in their way, kind of, which was, you know, what we thought was the way to go way back when. And today we're facing kind of the consequences of those. So we have issues like eroded and failing stream banks, sediment issues, flooding issues, and invasive species issues. And certainly invasive species is a personal passion of mine, or at least hating invasive species is a personal passion of mine. So let's take another quick look at this and focus here on the red arrows. So we have one behind this structure, which I still haven't figured out what it is, and then one here where the stream comes together. So now you see this. So this is today, or a couple of years ago, 50 years later. And now some of you might cringe and just feel like you got sucker punched by seeing more development and green lawns and this and that and houses and impervious area and driveways and all this sort of stuff. But so we do have new development requirements, and these requirements have lots of